Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today will be a refresher video on setting up cPanel for Lightcell. A while back, I did an introductory video on setting up cPanel on the Lightcell instance. This was when AWS first introduced a blueprint or an image of cPanel for the Lightcell instances. It was a popular video, and based on the comments and questions that I received in emails, many of you found it useful. The process has changed a little bit since I first did that video. So in this video, I wanted to walk you through setting up cPanel on Lightcell, perform basic security configuration and optimizations, and install an antivirus software. We'll install a firewall that I found to be useful. And then we'll set up a couple of websites just to round off the setting up of cPanel. So without further ado, let's get started. Okay, so let's get started. We'll create our instance. The platform should be Linux, Unix. In the blueprint, pick cPanel and WHM for Linux. And this is just a reminder that this is a bring your own license software. So the trial license is good for 15 days, but then after that, you'll have to pay for your license. And then choose an instance plan. Choose something that's most appropriate for the type of websites that you'll be running on your instance. And then identify your instance or name your instance, and then click Create Instance. Now, this will take about 2 to 5 minutes for it to be fully provisioned. While that's happening, we could go ahead and create our IP address. So let's come on over to Networking, create static IP address, give it a name, and hit Create. And then this will be your static IP address that you'll attach to the instance once it's available to do so. So let's go back into the dashboard and see if it's available. Okay, so the instance is now showing as active and running. So like I said, let's attach the IP address. So let's go back to networking, click on cPanel IP, and then select the instance and click on attach. And then at this point, the next step we will do is reset the root password before we start our cPanel setup. So to reset the password, click on the SSH terminal icon, or alternatively, you can log in with your favorite SSH client. But we'll do this and type in the command sudo passwd, and then set a new password. And then once that's successful, exit out. And now we'll take this IP address and start our cPanel setup. So open a new tab, type in https:// and then paste your IP address. And actually, I missed one. After pasting the IP address, the port is 2087. And then you'll get this connection isn't private message, but we'll click on advanced and click continue and come up to the WHM setup. So here we'll type in our username, which is root, and then the password that we just set up. And this part is a little bit different from, I believe, the previous setup video that I did. Here, you'll read through the license agreement, and if you agree, click on agree to all. And then the second part here is that it actually wants you to create a cPanel account and then provision the trial license. So we're going to click on login. And I'm already logged in, but you would have received a login that indicated, or a screen that indicated to log in or create a cPanel account. So go ahead and create a cPanel account if you haven't already, or log into your cPanel account. And once you are logged in, it should give you a screen like this. What you want to verify here is the IP address. So the server 52.371 or 7.151 is requesting a cPanel license. So what we want to do is just verify that that is our server, our static IP address. And that is. Now, when I ran through this a few times before, what had happened is the IP address that was showing here was the dynamic temporary IP that's assigned to your instance when you first create the instance. And so if that happens here, you won't have anything, you won't be able to fix this here. So you'll go ahead and allow access, and then when it runs through the cPanel license activation, it will give you an error at that point. So what you need to do then is go over to your cPanel account and update the IP address that's attached to your license. So you'll come in here, do account login. So again, this is only if you come across and get this IP address that is different from your static IP address. So you'll go this step. You'll come here and you'll look at your licenses. And then here you'll notice, you'll see that the license will be showing the old IP address. And what you do then is click on Actions and then edit the IP address for your license. So ours is not showing up here just yet, but I did run into that issue on a couple of trial runs that I went through when I was getting ready for this video. So just wanting to let you know that that sometimes this will happen. But in our case now, it should not. We'll click on Allow Access. And it will come across this screen again. Click Continue. And it will be activating the trial license. This is when that error occurs that I was telling you before. Right here, this will be an X, and it will say that it cannot activate the license. So at that point, you log on over to your cPanel account and edit the IP address and match this IP address to your server's static IP address. And then run through this setup again, and it should activate the trial license. We'll go ahead and click on Server Setup. Give it an email address. Leave the name server options the same. If you intend to run all your domain's DNS management on this server itself, then you'll run through some different setups. I personally, if I was setting up a cPanel account, I would not use the server's name servers for my DNS management. I recommend doing that on your domain registrar's DNS management, or you could use Lightsail's DNS management or AWS's Route 53. I did a recent video, an overview video on Lightsail DNS and Route 53. So if you are interested in looking at that, I'll have a card right up here. But I don't recommend using this server as a DNS system. And then that'll log us into the WHM cPanel account. The first thing we'll do is verify that our IP address is configured correctly. It should be in this scenario, but you always just want to make sure. So you'll click on Server Configuration, then Basic WebHost Manager Setup, and then scroll down here. And just make sure again that this IP address is the static IP address that you attached to this instance. In our case, that is correct. So the next thing what we'll do is turn off unnecessary services. So again, this is my opinion. If I were running a cPanel server, I would solely use it for web hosting and web applications. So if I go over to Service Manager, so this is a little handy tool. Just type in the section that you want to go to, and it filters or reduces the menu to just that area. cPanel has a lot of options, and so scrolling through that is always a little difficult. So just type in that Service Manager, and we'll go to the configuration for the various services that are set up on cPanel. So I don't want to run a mail server on this instance as well. I would probably use something like Zoho or Sendinblue. I also have done a recent video on AWS SES, Simple Email Service. You can set that up as an SMTP server as well as an incoming email server, and I have a video on, actually I have an entire 3-part series on that, so I'll link that up here as well. But I've done videos on Sendinblue, Zoho, Gmail, and a couple of others. So I would really recommend using email service externally from this server. So what I would come in here do then in that case is turn off the mail server that comes with cPanel. I would also turn off the IMAP server because we don't need that. And then turn off this Mailman, which is a mailing list manager. I would not use it here. And I also would turn off POP3 and then Spam Assassin. So doing this will reduce the server usage needed to run cPanel itself. If you intend to run mail servers and mailing list managers or things like that, then you don't want to do this step. All right, looks like that is done. So the next thing we will do is run our security advisor and optimize and set up the basic security options. So let's type in security advisor. Click on that. This will do a scan of your system and identify items that need to be either configured or installed for basic security. Okay, so the first thing it wants us to do is configure Apache vhost to be segmented. So what we'll do here, it tells us is enable mod root 2 in easy Apache 4. So this is already done for us. This is default as part of the cPanel install, but then it also says enable jail Apache and tweak settings. So you can just click on this, a new tab opens, and it takes you directly to that part of tweak settings in the server configuration. So you'll see here that this is off by default, but we want to turn that on as a security measure. And then we will wait for it to be done, and then you can close this window. Now you come back here and it wants us to install an antivirus software. It recommends one right here, and it's a free antivirus software, so we will use this. There is another one called ClamAV in the plugins and modules section or add-on section if you want to install that. But in either case, just make sure an antivirus software is installed. And once it's installed, you should see this message. And we can come back to this, our original tab. And then the next thing is add KernalCare's free Symlink protection. So this is a patch that protects your system from Symlink attacks. Not really sure what that does, but we should go ahead and turn that on. So let's click on this add KernalCare's free Symlink protection. And that should just run through the installation process for turning that on. You should get a message that's saying that it's enabled and will be redirected back to Security Advisor. Okay, once it refreshes, we'll run through the scan once more and we'll attack the next item that's on the list. It will be the system kernel is at an older version and there's a new version available. So we'll open up our SSH terminal again. So go back to your Lightsail dashboard, click on the SSH terminal icon, and you will be logged in. Here at this point, what you want to do is run the command that's available or they provide you right here. So yum update, yum-y update. So we'll run that. Just make sure you put sudo in front of that to run it as root. Okay, so the packages were installed and verified. So what we'll do is now exit out of the SSH window, close that, and then come back to your security advisor or cPanel screen, and then we will reboot the server. So you should have this little yellow message up here. If not, you could always just reboot using the reboot command, which is one of these two right here. So we'll just click on this one for now, and then reboot the system. And this probably again takes 2 to 3 minutes for it to reboot and come back online. So we'll resume right after that. All right, our system is rebooted and online again. So let's type in our username and password one more time. And this takes us back to the screen. So let's continue our security advisor items. So go back to security advisor, let it scan. Okay, so final two things remain, which is MySQL service configured to only listen on the localhost port IP and disable SSH root login. So let's do this one first. This is the file that we need to modify and then restart MySQL. So let's go back into our Lightsail dashboard, click on cPanel's SSH icon, and then here we will type in sudo vi and then the path that I copied. And then here we will copy this line of code. Go back to the terminal that you have open, and then you can just add it at the end. Bind-address equals 127.0.0.1. So once you have that, save, and then we will restart MySQL. So I'm going to keep this window open because we'll need it in a second, but a way to restart MySQL is, again, come back into our menu here and then say restart. We can come back down here to MySQL. All right, MySQL is restarted. So let's go back to Security Advisor. And make sure that we should only have one item left to do. Okay, so the last piece here is to disable root login for SSH. So what we will do here is modify the config file. So copy this. We had our terminal window open. So same thing, sudo vi, paste that path, and then come down here to permit root login. So we will remove the comment. So we will enable it, and then we will set this to no. And then save it, and then we need to restart SSH. So again, same thing, search for restart, open SSH. So let's restart, and the restart was successful. All right, so that should wrap up all of our security advisor recommendations. So let's check that one more time. The next thing what we need to do is install a firewall. Okay, so our scan now found no issues at all, so we are good to go. As I mentioned, then the next thing we will do is install the firewall. So this right here, configserver.com/cp/csf.html. This is a free firewall service that you can install on your cPanel instance. So that's what we will do next. So let's log into SSH, and we will do wget, and then right here, come back to this config server site, and then right click on this and copy the link. This is the latest version that can be downloaded, so we will do that. Paste and hit enter, and that should fetch the file and download it to your server. And we'll run tar-xzf and the file csf.tgz, and then we will cd into CSF, and we will run sudo install sh, and this will install the firewall, and that should say install completed. We're done. We'll exit out of the SSH window. And then if you come back to your WHM, we should now have a section called Firewall. There we go, plugins, config server, security, and firewall. Click on that. And the firewall is by default enabled in test mode, but we want to change that. So one thing that we will do here is we're going to check server security. So we'll click on this, and there's some things that it recommends we do to the firewall. So we'll run through these options right now. What I'd like to do is open this in a new window, so I have this open for me. So we'll hit this again. And then we will go down to firewall configuration. Click on that. And then here's the firewall that's in test mode, so you can turn that off. The next thing that it recommended was we need to start CSF, so we will do that next, but we need to turn this option on, restrict underscore syslog. So if we come back to the configuration section, restrict underscore syslog, so we will set that to 3. And I chose 3 because that's what it says right here. This is what's recommended. The next thing is SMTP block. We should enable that. So again, let's come down here to where we have SMTP block. Easier just to search for SMTP block. There we go. SMTP block, turn that on. Next thing is LF underscore script alert. So let's turn that on. LF underscore script alert. Syslog check. So search for syslog. And it recommends just a value between 300 and 3600. So we will do 300. And then the final item is PT underscore all underscore users. Make sure we have that checked. So PT underscore all underscore users, and we turn that on. I think those were all the items. So let's come here and save this configuration. Click on change. And then it will want to restart. So click on restart the firewall. And once that's done, click on return, and we should see a green status saying it's enabled and running. So this is just a basic security configuration of a firewall. There are a lot more, many more configurations to tweak and work on, but those are usually very dependent on the type of system you're running. So, all right, so the next step we want to do is turn on ModSecurity. So we will search for ModSecurity in cPanel, and then we will come down here to vendors. And what we want to do is install this rule set. This is OWASP ModSecurity Core Rule Set. So this installs basic security configurations to help protect your website from cross-site server scripting attacks, or many other known vulnerabilities in Apache. It patches those. And so it is recommended by cPanel to turn this on. So we should go ahead and do that. Install and restart Apache. Okay, so once we have all of these items set up, we should now be able to start setting up our accounts. So we would go to create an account. So click on create a new account. And this is how you're really installing a website or setting up a website on cPanel. So you will say what domain you have. So web hosting for beginners.site. It creates a username. You can change the username if you want. Set a password. Type in an email address. And then really leave everything else the same. Come down to mail routing settings. Now, if you are running a mail server on this server for this domain, then you'll want to keep local mail exchanger, but I would just pick automatically detect, and that's the recommended option. Then before you set up under DNS settings, again, I've mentioned that I don't want to manage the DNS for domains on the server itself. I'll either do that at my DNS registrar or Lightsail or AWS Route 53. So I will check this third box. Use the name servers specified at the domain's registrar. So I'll check that. And you'll see that for my domain here, name.com is the DNS management system. So we'll go ahead and hit create. So what is happening is it's creating you a cPanel account for this domain, provisioning the basic setup for hosting your website. If you want to host a second website, click on create a new account and then set your second domain up. So in this case, I could have another domain called mdub.site. It's another domain that I have. Username, if you want to modify it, give it a password, and then an email address, and then same configuration setup. I'll let the mail server be automatic, and then use the name servers. And you'll see in this case, I'm using Route 53, or I'm using AWS's DNS system for this domain. Click on create, and that should be done. So here now, what you can see is go to list accounts, and you will see the two sites that are set up, the IP addresses shared between them, and now you can manage them. You can install WordPress using the site software capability that's in cPanel. So let me show you that. In the search, type in site software, and then click on, I think we click on install cPanel add-ons. So this is not enabled by default, but if you want, you can click on the checkbox here for WordPress, and then update the config. That should take about a couple of minutes for it to install the package and get it ready for us to use in our cPanel window. Okay, so that's installed and good. So let's go back to our list accounts, and then we can click on the CP icon that will log us into the cPanel. Web hosting for beginners.site. Click on cPanel, brings you to the cPanel management for your domain, and then you can come down to software section. Here's a site software. Click on that, and WordPress is now an option. And then you can install. There is an advanced configuration if you wanted to set up your own admin username, password, and any other basic settings before the installation takes place. So you can do that. We can just hide it and just install it. At this point, you can also install it at different locations on your domain. So you can add a subdomain if you want to install it on www.webhostingforbeginners.net. Or if you want to install it in a subdirectory, you would click on Show Advanced, and you can set up a subfolder. This could be website or whatever you want to call it. But leave this blank if you intend to install it at the root of your domain. But if you hide the configuration, that should be by default root of your domain. Click on Install. And this is just a one-click installer. This is one way to quickly get WordPress installed. I do have a video on how to install WordPress using the command line in one of my previous videos, so I'll link that up here as well if you're interested in seeing how to install WordPress through the command line. But at this point, we have WordPress installed on this domain. You can close this tab and go back to your other domain. And you can also install WordPress on this domain. So now you have two accounts, two domains on the same cPanel instance. And you can configure as many as you can, provided your server can handle that many websites. So you always want to pick the server size based on the type of websites and the number of websites you intend to install. A couple of other things I could show you in cPanel. You can manage the database using phpMyAdmin. That's enabled by default. You can add more subdomains if you want to install WordPress or install other applications on subdomains. For example, if you intend to run a newsletter software, I've in my previous videos explained there is a new tool that I found, a new application called Sendy. It's a very good mailing list management or newsletter management software. You can install that on a subdomain. here, and I have a link down in the description below. It is an affiliate link, so if you like it or intend to purchase it, try to use the link down below. That way the price won't change for you, but it may give me a little commission. So I think those were the items that I wanted to show you on the second refreshed video of cPanel. Again, if you have any run into any issues, just put them down in the comments below. If you found this video useful, don't forget to give it a thumbs up, share it with others that may need this type of setup. And until the next video, take care.